In this video, we will enable IPS inspection on the FortiGate. So IPS, or Intrusion Prevention, is another security mechanism that looks for specific attacks or patterns of data in a traffic flow. If the pattern matches against a defined signature, which we'll talk about what that means, but when it matches against a defined signature, then the firewall can drop that session, which could infect and harm internal services and data. So in order to set this up, the first thing that we need to do, just like in most other cases, we need to enable the IPS feature on our firewall. Go to Features, and here under Security Features, let's go ahead and turn on Intrusion Protection and say Apply. Next, let's go to Security Profiles and then to Intrusion Protection. This will show the default IPS profile that we can use. And in this default profile, it is configured to block any type of traffic that matches an IPS signature classified as a medium, a high, or as a critical event, regardless of the operating system or the target itself. This profile will match against any IPS signature that exists in the database on our firewall, all 7,763 signatures to be exact. So we can view this current IPS signature table by going to View IPS Signatures. And this will show all the signatures is severity, the operating system, and its default action, which will likely be blocked for medium, high, and critical rated signatures. So backing up a bit. So an IPS signature is like a file that will list a specific pattern of data that may be detected in a network session or application that is used. These patterns, when combined together, could be a security breach, such as data loss, or bringing down services, or providing an exploit that can allow you to access something remotely. So these IPS signatures reflect known threats and attacks that may exist in a traffic flow. So it's a lot of signatures here, like this one right here. And it does provide a description and also some reference about that particular attack. So it will show the affected products. So if our environment is using 3C daemon products, then enabling this signature is important if an attack happens to that application on our network. Then a remote hacker could gain control of your internal systems. So this provides good information of understanding these type of attacks that could happen. So let's go ahead and close this up here, and let's go back to the main IPS page. We will create a new IPS profile that will be used by our staff users. Let's enter a name for this profile, or this IPS sensor, as it is called. Next, we will create a pattern based on the signatures that we want to use. So on this page, there's a lot of ways for how we can select the type of signatures that we want to use. We can do it based on the severity, the target, even the operating system that applies to our environment. Or we may want to filter based on specific signatures, but that option is not very common. You want to block anything that is a threat to your environment. So we'll be doing it based on, or it'll be based on the filter based for our particular sensor type. Now for the filter options, everything listed here is basic, but there's also an advanced view which can filter signatures based on the applications and protocols used in the environment if we want to be more specific to the relevant signatures that applies to our environment. But we will select basic for the filtering option. In this profile, we want to filter any signature that has a severity of medium and higher. Anything else, we can ignore those signatures because they're likely to be low impact type threats. This will apply for any target and operating system that is used. We do not care whether it's from the client, the server, if it's a Linux or Windows machine. We want to inspect that for any type of target and operating system. What we care about is that if there is a high threat, we want that to be blocked and to take no chances at all. Now, based on these filter options that we want, we can define the action if that signature is matched by our firewall. And that can be found here at the bottom of this page. So we can use the signature defaults, which will likely block high and critical threat signatures. We can monitor, we can reset or quarantine, or we can block those sessions, which is what we want. And let's also turn on packet logging, which is good for like logging and for troubleshooting purposes. And we are done. So let's go ahead and add this filter. Let's add another signature to this profile that will be used when we test to confirm if IPS functionality works. So let's do another create new. And we will select a specific signature this time. And we will type in EICAR. In doing that, that will list a matching signature that will be rated as information, meaning that it would never be blocked by our firewall, it will only be monitored. But selecting this test file is great for testing against your IPS and IPS operations. And of course, again, the default action reflects monitor all. So when we test this out, we want this to be blocked. Therefore, we will go ahead and select this signature. And we will click on block all. And we'll say OK. Okay, so now that is listed, there it is, as a pattern that our firewall will search for, and if it detects it, it will block it. Finally, let's apply and create this profile. Let's now go to the policy page on our firewall. And for cleanup, let's delete this existing rule that is used by our staff users. Let's create a new policy on this page where any staff user connected on our LAN, communicating through the WAN to the internet, the source address would be our user network, which is where our staff users exist. And the source user will be our staff group, and this will enable the web authenticated portal. The destination will be any address on the internet for all services. And under security profiles, we will enable IPS right here, and let's select the staff profile. And let's also select our custom SSL inspection profile. And let's go ahead and save our changes. Next, let's move this rule up so it is above the contractors. And we did that because these policies work from the top down, and we don't want our users to match against this policy, which pertains to all networks. This pertains to our staff users, so we want to make sure that they are reaching this particular rule first. Okay, now for testing. Let's go to our user computer that we are connected to. Okay, and let's go to the eicar.org website. That's what we use for our antivirus testing. And of course, based on our configuration, we need to log in as a staff user. And our password. Okay, now we're connected. So now let's go ahead and let's click on this test file link here. Then let's go to download right here. Then we can click on one of the test files here at the bottom. Okay, so as you would notice that the page will continue to spin and load because that file is being blocked. And it's just spinning and spinning. So back on our firewall, when we go to the security log for IPS, okay, and there you will see that our staff user tried to download the EICAR test file that our IPS profile is configured to block, which is reflected right here. This is our staff user and of course the exact signature that was matched. So as a result, it was dropped. So unfortunately, using IPS, it does not provide a block page. So the experience for the user may be a little confusing, but that is something to keep in mind. And that will conclude this video for learning how to set up and understanding signatures and how to test against IPS or intrusion protection on the FortiGate unit, which is a great additional security mechanism to stop against known attacks and threats that could impact your network.